Custard can be cold like ice cream, or it can be various degrees of soft or firm as in pies and quiches. Oh, custard can be melting like creme brulee, or it can be hot and savory like Japanese chawanmushi. In addition, the texture of custard can be further manipulated from extremely dense to as light as air to form fillings and frostings and creams and mousses and every possible flavor for pastries and fancy desserts. In theory, a basic custard is easy to make. Just mix eggs, sugar, milk, and flavorings together, pour the mixture into custard cups, and bake. Unfortunately, even basic custard is easy to screw up, especially when you start substituting ingredients. I personally have made more lumpy, curdled, liquidy, disgusting custards than I care to remember. Some recipes produce great results. Other recipes produce mediocre, inconsistent, even disgusting results. And for years, I could never figure out why. Fortunately, custard making is not actually a mystery. All custards are governed by a handful of basic rules. Once you understand those rules, you'll be able to make your custards come out perfectly every time. You'll also be able to make substitutions intelligently, so you can improvise, even create your own recipes, and never ruin another custard. We will make 3 basic types of dessert custard together: creme brulee, creme anglaise, and creme patissiere. Once you have mastered these 3 basic custards, you should be able to execute or modify most recipes utilizing custard without mishap. In addition, you should understand enough to be able to create your own recipes. A custard is an emulsion. Eggs and fat and liquid blended together and cooked into a tender, melting, homogeneous food.
What is an emulsion?
As everyone knows, oil and water don't mix. However, you can bind oil and water together using a third substance called an emulsifier. The resulting homogeneous fat and liquid substance is an emulsion. French vinaigrette binds oil and vinegar together using mustard as the emulsifier. Mayonnaise binds oil and vinegar together using raw egg yolk as the emulsifier. Custard, then, is a cooked emulsion, binding fat and liquids together using egg yolks or whole eggs as the emulsifier. The egg yolk contains lecithin, which provides most of the emulsifying power of the egg. You can make custards with egg yolks or whole eggs, but never egg whites alone. Have you ever tried to make a custard with non-fat milk? The custard separates, becoming soupy and disgusting. If you don't have enough fat in your custard, it will always curdle or separate when cooked. That's why custard-type pie fillings, such as lemon meringue and pecan, always contain added butter. Lemon meringue pie filling is essentially thickened lemonade. Without butter or some other fat to emulsify, the eggs in those fillings would curdle when cooked. I know only one non-fat custard that I like: chawanmushi. Chawanmushi is a Japanese savory cup custard made from stock, whole eggs, flavorings, vegetables, and meat, steamed or baked in covered ramekins. But chawanmushi separates during cooking because it contains no added fat, so chawanmushi is officially classified as a soup.
How much fat is enough?
Homogenized whole milk at about 3.5% milk fat contains the bare minimum amount of fat needed to keep your custard from separating. Custard is assembled fairly quickly, so always measure out your ingredients before you begin. 1. Heat the milk and/or cream over medium-low flame. 2. Beat the egg yolks or whole eggs and sugar together until they form the ribbon. 3. Temper the egg mixture by slowly beating in 1/3 to 1/2 of the hot milk. After this point, the cooking process differs depending on what kind of custard you're making. We'll talk more about that later. Let's look more closely at the initial steps. Heat the milk and/or cream over medium-low flame. Always use hot milk. Dessert custards taste freshest when cooking times are minimized. Low or medium-low heat helps reduce the likelihood of scorching or burning of the milk. If you use all cream or a cream milk mixture, never allow it to boil. Boiled cream curdles, making gritty, grainy custard. You may boil milk briefly, but you must never boil cream when making custard. While the milk is heating, beat your egg yolks or whole eggs and sugar together until they form the ribbon. You can use either a whisk or an electric hand mixer, adding sugar gradually. If you add sugar too quickly or all at once, you'll cook your eggs and get nuggets of hardened yolk in the custard.
What is the ribbon?
Beat your egg yolks and sugar until the mixture is pale yellow and doubled in volume. When you scoop up a small amount and pour it back over itself, it will form a noticeable ribbon on top, which slowly melts. The ribbon demonstrates that the sugar is dissolved and that the eggs are properly emulsified. The melting time varies depending on the amount of sugar used.
What kind of sugar works best?
Superfine sugar, also known as caster sugar or baker's sugar, dissolves to form the ribbon quickest. Raw or unrefined sugars add richer flavor, but take longer to dissolve. Fortunately, with custards, you don't have to worry about overbeating the eggs. Regular granulated sugar is my last choice, although it works perfectly well. Before the beating is finished, I use a silicone spatula to scrape up all the unmixed yolk and beat the mixture a little bit more. Unmixed yolk can cause lumps.
Do the eggs really need to be beaten to the ribbon stage?
Beating eggs and sugar to the ribbon stage gives you a perfectly smooth custard. Some recipes skip beating eggs and sugar to the ribbon stage. So I decided to perform side-by-side comparison tests to determine whether this step made any noticeable difference. The answer was yes. Beating eggs and sugar to the ribbon stage significantly reduced graininess and curdling in the final custard, regardless of the cooking process. Temper the egg mixture by slowly beating in 1/3 to 1/2 of the hot milk. Add hot milk and or cream gradually in dribbles. Don't add the hot milk all at once or you will scramble your eggs. Once you've added 1/3 to 1/2 of the hot milk, the eggs are sufficiently tempered. At that point, you may either pour in the rest of the hot milk all at once or pour the tempered egg mixture into the hot milk, depending on the recipe. That's the basic procedure for preparing all dessert custard bases. Cooking methods and ingredient proportions may vary, but these basic steps are always the same. Creme brulee sounds fancy, but it's really just a simple cup custard with a caramel topping. Anyone can make it. However, as with all refined dishes of great simplicity, the devil is in the details. High quality, fresh ingredients are critical because their flavors are so exposed, but equally important is careful preparation. Flavorful ingredients and perfected textures are essential to great creme brulee. The creme brulee ideal is a contrast of textures, a very thin, crisp layer of crunchy caramel sitting atop cold, perfectly smooth custard of great tenderness that just melts away as soon as it warms in your mouth. I'll show you how to achieve that perfect balance of crunch and creaminess. To help prevent curdling of the custard, you need to regulate the cooking temperature using a water bath. A water bath, also called a bain-marie, is a large baking dish into which the custard cups are placed. After the cups have been filled with warm custard base, the water bath is filled with almost but not quite boiling water and placed into the oven. You need a pan large enough to hold 8 4-ounce or 6 6-ounce custard cups or ramekins. Place a filled tea kettle on the stove and bring to a simmer. While the tea kettle heats, measure out custard ingredients. 2 cups heavy cream, pinch salt, 6 egg yolks or 3 whole eggs, 1/4 cup sugar, 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. Heat cream. Add salt to cream if using. Set over low flame. Remember, don't let the cream boil or the custard will be gritty. For the ultimate in flavor, use a real vanilla bean instead of vanilla extract. Slice the bean lengthwise. Scrape out the seeds and put them in the cream. Add the bean to the cream. Steep over low heat for 15 to 20 minutes. Remove the bean. Beat eggs and sugar to ribbon stage. As with any cup custard, you can make creme brulee either with egg yolks or with whole eggs. Egg yolks work best. They give the custard a tender, melt-in-your-mouth texture which cannot be surpassed. Whole eggs give the custard a firmer texture, good for picnics or other situations where the custard cannot be kept refrigerator cold. If you like sweeter custard, you may use up to 1/2 cup sugar. I prefer my desserts less sweet. For a richer flavor, use blonde, brown, or unrefined sugar. Temper the eggs, then beat in the rest of the hot cream. If not using a vanilla bean, mix in the vanilla extract. Ladle custard into ramekins. Skim off the foam before ladling, or you'll get an undesirable brown crust on the custard. Fill the water bath with steaming hot water until the level comes halfway up the sides of the ramekins. Bake for 20 to 35 minutes until the custard is set but still quivers. Never let the water bath boil or simmer. If the water bath simmers, your custard is boiling and curdling. Turn down the oven immediately. Start checking for doneness at 20 minutes. If the custard sloshes, it's not properly cooked. The custard should shiver when the pan is jostled. Don't let the custard cook absolutely solid. That would make it tough instead of tender. Cool ramekins on cooling rack. Once cool, cover and refrigerate for at least 4 hours or overnight. Because you've cooked the custard just to the tender melting stage, it must be completely chilled before you caramelize the top. Otherwise, the custard will just melt under the heat. White, brown, raw, blonde, organic, evaporated cane juice, coconut sugar. We have many sugar options. Which ones make superior caramel? Caramel is made by cooking or burning sugar until it turns nut brown. Caramel flavor is actually burnt white sugar flavor, so white sugar makes the truest tasting caramel. Refined white sugars were specifically developed for candy and caramel making. Some creme brulee recipes call for brown sugar caramel. Brown sugar contains molasses, as do unrefined, raw, or natural sugars. As brown sugar caramelizes, the molasses burns, blackening the caramel. Cajun cooks prize that mild bitterness. It's an interesting contrast to the creamy custard. Unfortunately, burning molasses stinks. I mean, the smell is mildly nauseating. Restaurant kitchens have powerful fans to suck the stench away so the customers don't get grossed out. But in your home kitchen, stick to caramel made from refined white sugar. The perfect creme brulee crust is thin and crisp. A thick caramel crust is hard to break cleanly. That much candy also sticks between your teeth instead of melting into the custard. If you make the caramel in a saucepan, as some recipes suggest, that caramel will always be too thick because caramel syrup is very viscous. For the perfect creme brulee caramel crust, thin and crisp, the secret is superfine sugar, also known as castor sugar, also known as baker's sugar. Superfine sugar is simply refined white sugar, ground into very fine crystals. The tiny crystals stick to the custard more readily and melt more evenly under the heat than ordinary granulated sugar does, making a superb crust. Sift a thin layer of superfine sugar over your chilled custard cups. Gently shake out excess. This allows the perfect amount of superfine sugar to stick to the custard. Then, apply flame to caramelize the sugar. In the old days, chefs would caramelize the sugar using a broiler. They packed the custard cups in ice and placed them under the flame until browned. Today, most chefs use culinary blowtorches. The heat is easier to control. Take a small butane-fueled culinary blowtorch, I got mine at Home Depot, and light it. Don't use a propane blowtorch. It will make the custard taste like soot. Apply the heat one area at a time until the sugar boils and just begins to brown. Then proceed slowly across the surface of the custard cup. Once finished, allow the caramel to cool for a minute or two until the topping hardens. Serve immediately. The caramel cannot be made in advance because it quickly loses its crunch and gets soggy. You can torch the custards in the kitchen right before serving, but my friends and family prefer to use the blowtorch at the table, caramelizing their own toppings. It makes a fun finish to a dinner party. Don't forget, the custards must be thoroughly chilled, or the custard will melt when torched. Regular granulated sugar can be substituted for superfine sugar in a pinch, but you will probably apply too little or too much, making your crust overly thin or overly thick. American powdered sugar is not an acceptable substitute because it contains cornstarch, which burns under the flame. Whereas creme brulee is your basic baked cup custard, Creme Anglaise, our second essential custard, is your basic custard sauce. You cook Creme Anglaise in a saucepan, stirring until lightly thickened. Creme Anglaise is the traditional alternative to whipped cream on desserts. Creme Anglaise is extremely versatile. You can flavor creme anglaise with chocolate or coffee or liquors or fruit concentrates or flavoring extracts. If you freeze creme anglaise, it becomes ice cream. If you beat butter into extra thick, extra sweet creme anglaise, you get custard cake frosting. Layer creme anglaise with cake and you have trifle. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. Creme anglaise is used as a component in a wide variety of desserts. The basic cooking process is simple. Stirring constantly, you heat your custard until the eggs are coagulating. Stir over heat until the custard thickens the desired amount. Then force cool the custard to stop the cooking. 1. No egg whites. Creme anglaise must be made using egg yolks only. Egg whites make creme anglaise gritty and lumpy because the whites cook at a lower temperature than the yolks. 2. Always use a candy thermometer to keep the heat properly regulated and to make sure that the custard is safe to eat. Like mayonnaise, custard is a perfect breeding ground for bacteria. So, 3. You must heat the custard to at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit or 74 degrees Celsius. This instantly kills salmonella, which occurs naturally in raw eggs. Don't risk giving your guests food poisoning. Use a candy thermometer. Creme anglaise curdles easily because you're cooking the custard right at the temperature where eggs coagulate. If you're not careful, your creme anglaise will become scrambled eggs. For perfect creme anglaise, you must regulate the temperature carefully and stir constantly. Your stirring helps the egg proteins bind together in emulsion with the milk and cream. If you don't stir constantly, the eggs will coagulate into lumps and fall out of emulsion. If you allow the temperature to get too hot, the eggs will scramble.
At what temperature do I cook the custard?
Online, you will find some debate over the ideal cooking temperature for creme anglaise. Julia Child advocates for 165 degrees Fahrenheit to 170 degrees Fahrenheit. Many Brits claim that the magic cooking temperature is 81 degrees Celsius, which thickens your sauce very quickly. I tested both methods side by side. Cooking at the higher temperature may be faster, but it makes the sauce grainy, more prone to lumps, and it will taste more strongly of scrambled egg. 165 degrees Fahrenheit produces a smoother, better tasting sauce.
Okay, I'm ready to make creme anglaise.
First, measure out custard ingredients. For this example, we're making an 8 yolk sauce, suitable for English trifle. 250 milliliters of whole milk, 250 milliliters of cream, pinch salt, 8 egg yolks, 5 tablespoons sugar, 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. You'll also need 2 saucepans, 1 heat-proof silicone spatula, 1 candy thermometer, and an electric hand mixer. Heat milk cream mixture with pinch salt in saucepan over low to medium-low heat. You can make creme anglaise with whole milk, a combination of milk and cream, or all cream. The higher the proportion of cream, the smoother your custard will be. For non-dairy creme anglaise, you may substitute Thai coconut cream for the milk cream mix. Next, beat yolks and sugar to ribbon stage. The number of egg yolks in the recipe dictates the final thickness of the custard. 4 yolks make a dessert sauce, used as a light alternative to whipped cream. 4 yolk creme anglaise can also be frozen into ice cream. 6 yolks make a delicious all-purpose pouring custard. 8 yolks make a thick sauce suitable for creating trifles and parfaits. Sweetness of creme anglaise can be varied according to taste, anywhere from 2 tablespoons to 1 cup of sugar for 500 milliliters of liquid. 1/2 cup of sugar is standard. I prefer my creme anglaise less sweet, about 5 to 6 tablespoons of sugar for 500 milliliters of liquid. But beware. If you use too little sugar, your custard may taste more like cooked egg than custard. At this point, you may add an optional 1 teaspoon of cornstarch. Beat the cornstarch thoroughly into the egg-sugar mixture after it reaches ribbon stage. Added starch protects the eggs from curdling somewhat. I don't personally like the taste of unboiled starch in my creme anglaise, but added starch makes cooking the custard easier, allowing you to cook at a higher temperature without curdling, 170 degrees Fahrenheit to 175 degrees Fahrenheit. However, starch-thickened creme anglaise must be eaten immediately. Enzymes in the eggs break down the starch matrix in the finished custard, making it grow runny within a few hours. Once you've beaten at least 1/3 to 1/2 of the hot liquid in dribbles into the eggs are tempered and you can just pour the rest in. Use the silicone spatula to scrape up egg mixture stuck in the corners of the pan. To prevent lumps, you want to make sure that the eggs, milk, and cream are thoroughly mixed and form an homogeneous emulsion. Fill your kitchen sink, or a large mixing bowl, with a few inches of cold water. You want something your saucepan will fit into easily. Add ice cubes if you're using the mixing bowl. You'll need the cold water to help force cool your custard pan when the cooking is finished. Put your candy thermometer in the saucepan with your custard. Turn on the burner to medium or medium-low heat. You won't scorch the custard if you keep the heat moderate. Stir constantly or your custard will get lumpy. Just before the custard reaches temperature, reduce the flame to low or very low. Then keep the temperature as consistent as you can, just above 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Check your candy thermometer frequently. Expect to adjust the stove a lot. You may even need to take the custard off heat occasionally to cool it down, especially if your stove is electric. Stir all over so you don't get custard lumps in the corners of the pan. Again, Keep the custard in constant motion or your eggs will scramble. And don't cook your custard too long or it will become grainy. When the custard is thick enough to coat a spoon well and just begins to show a couple of bits of noticeable grain, take it off the heat. This example custard cooked in about 15 to 20 minutes. Put the bottom of your pan into the basin of cold water and stir or beat the custard until it is still quite warm but no longer painfully hot to the touch. This process is called force cooling. You really only need to cool the custard to just below 140 degrees Fahrenheit or 60 degrees Celsius, just enough to stop the eggs from cooking. Add vanilla and mix thoroughly. In addition to vanilla, or in place of vanilla, you may add up to 2 to 3 tablespoons of rum or cognac or liqueurs or fruit concentrates or other liquid flavorings. If using real vanilla bean, chocolate, or coffee flavorings, add them to the hot milk before cooking begins. If you like, you may continue to force cool your saucepan of custard until tepid. This is optional, but it means your custard will chill more rapidly in the refrigerator so you can eat it sooner. This creme anglaise can be served as a pudding in cups, or it can be used as a component in some other dessert, like English trifle. English trifle is a classic dessert that's super easy to make. All you need are the creme anglaise that you just made, some cake, either homemade Genoise or Genoese cake, or store-bought pound or angel food cake, some fresh berries, and some cream sherry. Mix 2 tablespoons sherry into your chilled vanilla creme anglaise. Cut cake into bite-sized cubes or pieces. Sprinkle cake cubes lightly with sherry, or dip the bottom of each cake cube into sherry. You want the cake to be moistened, but not sopping wet. Trifle is a composed dessert, usually assembled in a transparent bowl so the decorative layers can be seen. Carefully arrange a layer of sherry-flavored cake cubes in a small, transparent mixing bowl or serving dish. Spread half the berries on top. Spoon half of your creme anglaise over the berries and cake. Remember to spoon your custard decoratively around the edges of the bowl since your work will be visible. Then build a second layer of cake on top. Spread most of the remaining berries over the cake. Cover carefully with the remaining custard. Decorate with berries. Cover and refrigerate for at least 4 hours or overnight. The trifle needs that time for the cake to fully absorb the liquids and for the whole trifle to firm up. Creme Patissiere, also known as pastry cream, is the basic custard filling for a multitude of pastries. Napoleons, eclairs, fruit tarts, many different kinds of cakes, etc. Make a fairly stiff custard thickened with starch. Beat in flavorings, then fold or mix in cream, eggs, or butter until your filling is the right consistency. Custard made with starch is the most versatile custard. It can be manipulated into many luscious textures, from the lightest of cream puff fillings to the denseness of almond-enriched frangipan. Creme Patissiere is the only custard I know that you must boil for 1 to 2 minutes. Boiling does 2 things. It cooks the starch fully, and it deactivates the amylase enzyme in the egg yolks. If the creme patissiere is not boiled, the amylase enzyme in the eggs breaks down the starch matrix over time, causing the creme patissiere to grow slack or runny within a day or so. Creme patissiere contains enough added starch to protect the custard from curdling when boiled, as long as you don't boil the custard too long.
Which starch do I use?
2 different starches can be used to make creme patissiere: wheat flour or cornstarch. Wheat flour is the classic thickener and gives the best texture. Unfortunately, it makes the custard taste pasty, like uncooked flour. Cornstarch gives the best flavor, but its texture is more difficult to work with. Some chefs use a 50-50 blend as a compromise, but I prefer the flavor of the all cornstarch creme patissiere. I'll show you what to do to get great results. 500 milliliters whole milk, pinch salt, 4 egg yolks, 80 grams superfine sugar, 40 grams cornstarch, 1 teaspoon vanilla extract, 4 tablespoons softened butter. You'll also need 2 saucepans, 1 heat-proof silicone spatula, 1 candy thermometer, and an electric hand mixer. Creme patissiere should only be made using whole milk. If you make creme patissiere using cream, it will curdle as it boils, separating into greasy glop. For best results, add butter and cream only after cooking is complete. I like a pinch of salt in my pastry cream. This is not traditionally French, but salt-free creme patissiere tastes bland to me. Add 1/2 of the sugar to the milk. This protects the milk from scorching when boiled. Beating the eggs and sugar to ribbon stage should only take 2 to 3 minutes. At first, mix in cornstarch with a spatula. An electric mixer will spew dry cornstarch all over your kitchen. Once roughly mixed, then it's safe to smooth out the mixture with the electric mixer. Bring the milk to a boil over medium-low heat. Allow the milk to begin to boil up the sides of the pan to ensure that the milk is hot enough. Temper the eggs with 1/3 to 1/2 of the boiling milk. Do not add the remaining milk. Bring the remaining milk back to the boil. Once the milk again boils up the sides of the pan, start the electric hand mixer. Add the tempered eggs to the boiling milk all at once. As soon as the mixture burps, the custard is boiling. Stirring constantly, boil the custard for 1 to 2 minutes, no longer. Off heat, beat the custard continuously until it is cooled to below 140 degrees Fahrenheit or 60 degrees Celsius. This stops the eggs from coagulating further. You may dunk the bottom of the saucepan in cold water to lower its heat more quickly, but don't overcool your custard or you might ruin its texture. The custard should still feel very warm, even somewhat hot, after this forced cooling step has been completed. Beat in softened butter and flavorings. In addition to, or instead of, vanilla extract, you may add up to 2 tablespoons of liquor, liqueur, or fruit concentrate at this point. In addition to improving the flavor, the butter makes the texture of this all cornstarch creme patissiere more supple. Without added butter, the cornstarch thickened creme patissiere may break into chunks once fully chilled. Cover the surface of the creme patissiere with plastic wrap to prevent a skin from forming. Or wrap warm creme patissiere in plastic wrap like a flat package in order to facilitate cooling and for easy storage until ready to use. You may fill pastry with plain cornstarch thickened creme patissiere. Just let the custard cool to room temperature, then pipe it into your pastry. Tepid creme patissiere is more malleable than chilled creme patissiere. Chilled all cornstarch creme patissiere is prone to breaking into chunks, as I mentioned earlier. Creme patissiere is really a base custard, usually amended with other ingredients to make delicious variations. Wheat flour thickened creme patissiere is the easiest to work with. After chilling, you just beat the creme patissiere smooth, then fold in whipped cream, beaten eggs, or softened butter to thin the custard to the desired consistency. After a final chilling, you simply Pipe these creme patissiere variations into pastry. Creme patissiere thickened entirely with cornstarch must be handled differently because its starch matrix is fragile. If you beat chilled cornstarch thickened creme patissiere smooth, it turns into sauce. It will not firm back up with additional chilling. If you accidentally beat cornstarch thickened creme patissiere into sauce, don't despair. You can thin that custard sauce with liquor and whipped cream to make a quick and easy substitute for Creme Anglaise. For most purposes, you'll want to turn Creme Patissiere into either Creme Mousseline or Creme Legere. Creme Mousseline is Creme Patissiere plus butter. Creme Legere is Creme Patissiere plus whipped cream. There are many other variations, but these are the two you'll use most often. All creme patissiere variations made with all cornstarch thickened custard require added gelatin. Gelatin thickens and stabilizes the custard, so it doesn't run or separate. Before making your base creme patissiere, soften gelatin. Soften 1 teaspoon of Knox gelatin powder in 2½ tablespoons of water, liquor, coffee, or juice for 10 minutes. Cook your base creme patissiere, force cool it slightly, and beat in the usual softened butter and flavorings. In a small saucepan, gently heat the softened gelatin mixture until the gelatin dissolves completely. Off heat, stir 1 tablespoon of high-proof spirits, such as rum, vodka, cognac, even vanilla extract in a pinch, which is about 70 proof, into the gelatin mixture. This added alcohol prevents the gelatin from hardening into lumps when it is beaten into the custard. Beat the gelatin alcohol mixture into the creme patissiere. This gelatin-stabilized custard can then be amended with butter, eggs, or cream to make a variety of fillings. I'll show you how to make 2 of them, Creme Mousseline and Creme Legere. Beat an additional 1½ sticks, or 6 ounces, of softened, unsalted butter by tablespoons into the warm creme patissiere. Season with an additional pinch or 2 of salt to taste. Or you can use salted butter if your local butter isn't too salty. Cover the creme mousseline with plastic wrap to prevent the skin from forming. Chill for several hours or overnight. Once chilled, you may spoon the stiff creme mousseline into a pastry bag and pipe it onto cakes and other desserts. It makes the perfect filling for Boston cream pies, chocolate cakes, or beehives, just to name a few. Again, don't beat the chilled creme mousseline smooth before piping. Beating breaks down its cornstarch matrix, making the custard runny. Once the gelatin, butter, and flavorings have been beaten into the creme patissiere, continue to beat the custard until lukewarm. Whip 2/3 cup heavy cream to soft peak. Fold whipped cream into lukewarm creme patissiere. The creme patissiere must be lukewarm. Cover this custard with plastic wrap to prevent skin from forming. Chill thoroughly. Once chilled and ready to use, remember, don't beat the custard smooth. Beating will deflate the whipped cream and make the custard runny. Pipe chilled creme legere directly into pastries or other desserts. Vanilla-flavored creme legere is the traditional filling for Napoleons and chocolate eclairs.